We've recently been hands-on with Forspoken, the upcoming action role-playing game from Luminous Productions and Square Enix. And look, we need to talk about the combat. Speedy, intricate, and endlessly satisfying, it's a constant barrage of interwoven spells reminiscent of the best of Breath of the Wild. That intro may have had some of you rolling your eyes, but honestly, the combat in here feels like the zenith of what Zelda fans could achieve in Breath of the Wild. Remember those times when some of us were running around Hyrule, cowering in fear from Lynels and Guardians, then watching YouTube videos of other players working out how to use every tool at Link's disposal all at the same time? I do, and the result was incomprehensibly complex combos, or clips of players cycling through menus at impossible speed to chain together devastating takedowns. Well, in Forspoken, that approach won't be the domain of a dedicated few. It's how you're intended to tackle every single fight. Protagonist Frey's magical abilities are split in a number of different ways to make it easier to navigate between different spells in the heat of a battle. At the start of the game, your skills are based around the manipulation of the natural world, a shield wrought from earth, a magical barrage of rocks, and huge vines to club or ensnare enemies. With that early collection, you'll switch between spells intended for more traditional attacks and those that have more powerful or lingering effects, spamming the latter while weaving the former in between each cast. Different spells, and different types of spells, are found on radial menus, and while effectively swapping abilities in the midst of combat is a little tricky to begin with, it's easy to get the hang of. Those early spells alone require an impressive knowledge of Frey's initial abilities, but as the game progresses, you'll be able to switch to an entirely different school of magic. Later on, a pyromantic approach swaps your earthy basic attacks for flaming swords and spears, and your spells change to include pillars of flame or fiery elementals. Another radial menu determines which array of skills you're using at any given moment, making it easy to swap from one discipline to another, before you start carving and blasting your way through foes with an endlessly rotating barrage of spells. Some abilities in particular work beautifully together, grasping vines to hold an enemy in place while a wall of flame closes in around them, or a blast from your shield to stagger a foe before you charge in for a swipe with a fiery sword. Combat becomes even more skillful as you wave in Frey's magical parkour. Abilities are enhanced if you're on the move, granting extra power to body checks or extra range to certain attacks. Frey is dazzlingly fast, and the extra layer of control required to effectively weave in certain abilities in a pinch makes for fights that are surprisingly intricate given the explosive and varied nature of many of the available combat tools. Unfortunately, that makes parkour pretty disappointing when you're not in a fight. Forspoken's open world is large and offers plenty of verticality, but there's very little skill involved when it comes to traversing that enormous space. Closer to a sprint button than anything else, magical parkour looks cool, but didn't offer any of the skill-based traversal I was hoping for. Even later on, it looks as though climbing the steepest cliffs will simply be a test of stamina coupled with a series of fumbling, persistent jumps, more akin to Skyrim than Dying Light or Mirror's Edge. The speed that magical parkour offers does at least help tackle the lack of content in those open maps. There's a reasonable amount to uncover, but even in the hour or so that I played, I found myself sprinting past basic combat encounters in search of something new. Perhaps that's a symptom of my deliberately story-light demo, but its pseudo-apocalyptic setting and simplistic traversal means there's nowhere to set your sights on, and seemingly little reason to explore beyond your objective. Helping cut through the relative emptiness is Frey's back and forth with Cuff, a sentient bangle through which she draws her powers.
This is the place on Johedi's map, isn't it? Are you planning on retrieving her smithing gear?
Might as well while we're here. Besides, I want to know more about Scylla, and Johedi knew her.
The pair mostly chatter immediately before and after combat, meaning you won't be subjected to the cringeworthy stream of consciousness implied by that recent trailer.
Yeah, okay, that is something I do now. I do magic,
Kill jacked up beast. I'll probably fly next.
Yep, still cringeworthy, just had to check. But in fact, during the hands-on, while Cruft's charmingly sarcastic mentor with a British accent is a little bit played out, some of the genuine concern portrayed in his dialogue with Frey is actually quite touching. So far, the strict focus on combat means it's very hard to get a sense of how the world of Athena will feel once Frey's story actually begins. So, while Forspoken falls a little flat in its quieter moments right now, a greater sense of narrative purpose is only likely to build on some excellent combat. As I said, it's speedy, intricate, and endlessly satisfying when it begins to come together, and it's an excellent realisation of the varied spellcasting that drew me to Forspoken in the first place. I just hope that the rest of the game can live up to the impressive baseline that these fights have set. Forspoken is coming to PS5 and PC on January 24th, 2023, and we'll have more on the game as we get closer and closer to release.